Whereas my second guest, they didn't study law but ended up becoming a lawyer. So we're going to discuss about the various paths that they took to get to where they are and how their relationship with law affected them as well. So first for today is Rita Hussain. She studied law at Queen Mary's University in London and is now currently a compliance officer at an investment bank. Hey Rita, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you on, and thank you for accepting my invite for this interview. So my first question I want to ask is, so you study law at university, and I want to ask you
Yeah.
what made you want to study law in the first place?
What led me to making the decision to study law was that it built on my interests and strengths at school. So, for example, my strongest subjects when I was doing GCSEs and A levels were always English literature, history, economics, those types of subjects. And a lot of them involve, taking a theory or an argument, analyzing its pros and cons and coming to a conclusion. And for me, that, those types of subjects really appealed to my strengths, but also I found them really interesting. And then on top of that, the extracurricular activities I was involved in, debate society at school, those types of initiatives that we were also coordinating, all pushed me towards the direction of law. We had careers advisors that came in and they said you should probably consider this route. And then on top of that, the glitz and glamour of watching Suits and all that made me think, oh yeah, this looks cool. I could do this, and kind of pushed me towards that direction. And then at A levels, I continued to build on that and made the decision to apply for law.
Was there anything else you saw subject apart from law, or was it like, you go into sixth form, okay, I'm studying law, or was there any other pressures to study anything else?
In terms of what my family wanted me to do, I think as a brown Pakistani child, there's always the medicine route, especially when you're an intellectual child. They think, right, well, this is a smart one, we could push them into medicine. But there wasn't ever the pressure. It was more like, oh, what do you think about medicine? Do you want to do medicine? But I think they realized quickly I hated chemistry, and maths as well, so there was just no option of me ever becoming a doctor. But in terms of personally, I actually was conflicted between doing history and law when I was applying. But for me, the end goal was to become a lawyer. So I thought, why waste time and do the GDL? And that's why I ended up taking law in the end.
So once you made your decision to study law, what were you doing at school to prepare for it?
So just after my GCSEs finished, we had a careers coordinator at school, and he reached out to me because he knew I wanted to do law, and he told me about this opportunity that, called Pathways to Law. It's coordinated through many universities throughout the UK. I think when I started, there was about 12, and the closest one to me was University of Oxford. So I applied to join that program. It involved, showing your grades, showing your predicted grades, and explaining what you wanted to do at university and why you think law was best for you. It's a social mobility foundation program, so it was targeted specifically for first gen students that are going to university. So I got onto that program, and then for 2 years, whilst I was doing my A levels, they supported you in getting a place at university. So that included I got work experience at Magic Circle law firms. I attended lectures and lots of different events at the university. I had specific mentors, and then for 1 week in the summer, they also took us to Warwick University. So all the different universities that were doing the program brought their students to Warwick University for a week, within which we had loads of other events as well. So I think that was a major strong point in my applications when I was applying for university. But other than that, more generally, I was quite involved within the extracurricular environment at school. I was a senior prefect. I did debate society. I was the leader of the debate society. All those other things like prom and hoodies and levers and all that stuff. I just was really, really involved within the network at school. And I don't think that was that needs to be specific to law. I think universities and wherever you're going to really do like to see what you do outside of your education. So I think those are the main building blocks that I had for my application.
So you mentioned the Pathway to Laws program. How do you get involved in such a program? Was it your school who recommended it, or did you find out through friends and family?
So it was through my school. I think they reached out to our school to tell them about this opportunity, and that's how they communicated it to us. But I was very lucky to be made aware of it. I think there's a lot of people around me that were completely unaware that this opportunity existed. So once I got onto it the next year, I made it my own mission to tell the people around me in my local network that this is available and you should do it, because a lot of students that would have been eligible were missing out just because they didn't know about it. So I think the promotion of these initiatives needs to be a lot stronger, and I pushed that forward in my own school, because in my year they told us about it, but in the years below us nobody else knew about this program being in existence. So through my own network, I pushed that through, and I think it has fed through down into the years below us, because I see a lot more people signing up for it, and the actual scope of the Pathways to Law program itself has expanded. So I think when I was doing it, it was 12 universities. I think it's gone up to like 20 or so now. All the London universities are doing it. So LSE, UCL, Queen Mary. Queen Mary started it when I was actually at university, so I was there on the other side of it when I was at university as a mentor to the students coming in. So yeah, that's kind of how I came to know about it.
And why do you think such programs aren't as well known as they should be?
I'm not sure. I think a lot of it is to do with the fact that the people coordinating themselves don't reach out to the community enough. They create these programs and think that they'll speak for themselves, but unless there is the awareness, you're not going to attract the people that you want in those programs, because they're designed to help high performing students that perhaps are a bit disadvantaged because their parents or their family have never been through the university process. And unless you actually tell them that this opportunity exists, they're not going to be able to take advantage of it. So I think a major part of it is a lack of communication. And sometimes I think it's also the schools themselves don't encourage their students to go for these projects or these initiatives. You know, they tell them about it and they think, oh, okay, it's up to the student. But I think where it really helped me was that the careers advisor in my school actually knew what I wanted to do and then pushed me to apply for it, because he thought that I could really do well in it. So yeah, it's a combination of the both, I would say.
What was it like actually studying law at Queen Mary's then? So what's a law degree like?
Okay, so to have a qualifying law degree, which allows you to practice law eventually in the UK, in the UK, requires you to study, I think, 7 essential modules. So those are contract law, public law, criminal law, administrative law, I think jurisprudence was one, equity, and there was one other one that I can't remember. So we had to do those 7 essential modules that we split across the 3 years that we were studying. So the first year of university was doing 4 of those essential modules. So we did contract, public, criminal. I literally cannot remember the last one. But we did those 4 essential ones. The 7th one was EU law. I'm not sure how long we'll keep doing that for, but it was the 7th essential one. Then in 3rd year of university, sorry,
is tort law one of them, or was tort law optional?
Yes, tort law. Yeah, tort law. Okay. So yes, 2nd year of university was tort law, equity, admin law / EU law, and then you had the option to choose a 4th optional module. So my one was law, modernity, and the Holocaust. So that was exploring the legality of the Holocaust and how the Nazi regime exploited the law to kind of make it seem like what they were doing was legal and justified. And then it was exploring the arguments of morality versus law, ethics versus law. What if a law is a law, can you ever overturn it based on the fact that it's unethical or immoral? And then you had to basically do an exam and a very long paper on a topic of your choice. So my topic was exploring the roles of the victim, perpetrator, and bystander within the Holocaust, and kind of bringing that to a legal argument and seeing whose effect was the worst. So that was quite interesting. It was a kind of a segue away from the standard kind of law topics. And then the 3rd year, the only compulsory module then was jurisprudence, which is legal concepts and theories, and looking at all these different legal jurists and what their argument about what law means, what living in society means, what the social contract is, that kind of thing. And then you had optional modules. So in 3rd year, I did company law, which was awful. Don't do it. It's horrible. Made me cry. And then I did labor law, so basically employment law, intellectual property law, which was really, really fascinating, quite interesting. Would highly recommend doing, because you kind of look at the major brands around you and how they've established their dominance in the market, and the different kind of legal concepts that support them in doing that. And then the final one I did was law and literature. So looking at Shakespeare and how he portrays law within his early texts. So yeah, that's what I did at university.
Even though you say all that, though, you didn't actually become a lawyer in the end, did you?
No,
So
I did not.
what did you end up becoming after university then?
So after university, I did quite a few work experiences in corporate law whilst I was at university through the second leg of the Pathways to Law program, which was called Pathways Plus, which then supports university students in getting a career in corporate law. So again, they gave you a mentor, they gave you like 1 week internships, all of that kind of thing, again, but for university students. So I did work experience at quite huge corporate law firms, but for me, I wasn't really ever excited about the work that they were getting. A lot of it is other clients doing big things and you kind of doing the paperwork to help them achieve that. For me, like the satisfaction itself wasn't really there because you're always an outsider to the transaction, to the actual relationship. You're just there to support and facilitate. And for me, that just wasn't exciting enough to work the kind of hours that corporate lawyers work. Looking at all these all-nighters that they put in, for me that was never something that was appealing or something that I'd want to do. So I took the active decision in third year of university to not pursue that career route. And then I finished my final exams, and then I sat down. I remember it was Ramadan and I had all this time, and I was like, right, well, we need to figure out what we do actually want to do. So it was just exploring research, and then I came across this role in compliance within investment banking, which builds on the skills, uses a similar kind of concept. You look at regulation, you look at sometimes even law as well to see how it applies to the banking situation. And then you put together, plans, and you advise on how they should do that internally. What I liked about compliance versus becoming a lawyer was that you're working internally with, a set team, management, to all work towards a common goal output, and you're there to witness it all. Whereas with a lawyer, you're kind of there to advise on one simple situation, then you're removed from the situation. You don't really get to see that final outcome. Within compliance, not only are you working with the front office, telling them about the rules and restrictions and how it applies to the transactions, but you're working with all the other teams within the bank. You work with the general management, you work with the support functions of finance, audit, risk, all of them. You kind of have a role within to help them, operate in the right way. And then you also, to an extent, have a client-facing role in terms of you work with the regulators to kind of assure them that you're doing exactly what you need to be doing, and where something goes wrong, you're remediating it in the right way.
So do you feel your perceptions of law before you started university were incorrect then?
My perception of law going into university, I don't know, I think it was kind of skewed by my fascination with suits. Which is kind of embarrassing, but it's true, right? Everyone goes in thinking like lawyers are so cool. I mean, they get to say whatever they want to say, and they do what they need to do, and everything's very high flying and fast moving. But yes, that bubble kind of burst eventually once you start doing the work experiences, once you start speaking to people in the profession. It's not fast paced. There is a lot of work that goes into these things, a lot of hours, a lot of minor tweaks and changes that you're constantly working on before things come to fruition. And that was a bit of a disillusionment. And then when you learn about the kind of hours and the progression that you have, you're not really facing clients or doing that fun kind of, signing new clients up or maintaining client relationships until you hit like partner level, which takes years and years and years. And up until that point, you're working very, very hard to get to that position. So for me, sacrificing that much of my time and my livelihood to get to that eventual position where you're still working for someone, where you're still not doing the most exciting thing, for me personally, just wasn't worth it.
You mentioned your show Suits, for example. So like what was like the biggest misconception you got from that show? You mentioned like the whole like fast-paced kind of environment.
Yeah.
Was there anything else from that show like it's just not like that in real life?
Yeah, so in the show sometimes they push back to the client and say to the client like, no, you won't do this because I'm telling you to do this, and it can become very like confrontational and all of that thing. So it seems like the lawyer has a lot more power in the situation. In reality, that's not the case. You just do. You have to do what the client tells you to do, and you have to do it within the timelines that they tell you to do it. because they're working to a deadline as well, and you are engaged to do what they ask you to do. So they can advise, but it's nowhere near as, you know, as balanced a situation as it makes it seem in suits, and you have no capacity to be that arrogant or that forceful in your communication.
So what about compliance interests you? Of what you're doing? Like, what's the most interesting thing about your job?
I think the most interesting part of my job is that the regulatory environment in which we're operating is constantly evolving. Like there's always something new to be working on or something new to be researching and then making a plan to implement on. So for me, the past 2.5 years have been mostly dedicated to preparing for Brexit transition, because we are a French investment bank, and previously we were using the right for freedom of services to provide investment banking services in the UK without needing specific regulatory approval from the FCA and PRA. But then once that whole Brexit vote came into place, then we had to basically prepare for that whole situation being flipped on its head. So we can't rely on passporting rights anymore. So we have to comply with the local UK regulatory requirements, which are different in certain circumstances to the European ones, dealing with new reporting obligations. And then now also the UK regulators have intent to change some of their regulations that previously used to be in harmony with the European ones. So it's preparing for that, forecasting what's going to change, seeing what that impact will be on our operations in London. So for example, Brexit in itself, I think had like a 50-man team working on it for like 2.5 years, trying to get things ready, because the way that you service clients changes. So from a European perspective, only European people can serve European clients, but we're a French investment bank that we're constantly dealing with European clients. So the way that we do that changed. From the reporting perspective, we have to report all of our transactions done on the markets to the European regulators previously on a T+1, so the next business day basis. That all changed. So now all UK transactions have to go to the UK regulator, but then it was a definition of what actually is a UK transaction. How do you define it? Is it done through a UK trading venue? Is it done through a UK sales or trading person? So all of that, like there's a lot of room for interpretation, a lot of room for analysis. And I think for me, that's the most exciting part of what I do.
Do you reckon the ever-changing landscape of where you work is like replicating that fast-paced environment you're promised by Suits?
Probably to an extent, and also the fact that I actually do have the capacity to push back to people and tell them what to do in this role. Because so the one part of compliance I've shown you is more like the advisory project style of it, but then the other strong role of compliance is to prevent market abuse and tell people what they cannot or cannot do to be in compliance with the regulations. So you're monitoring transactions, you're monitoring people, you're holding them accountable for things that go wrong at certain times. And when they come to you for advice, you know what you tell them kind of has to go, because compliance are there to protect the bank, and they are seen as like, you know, a lot of people are actually scared of the function, because if we're contacting you and you're not sure of why, then people genuinely get scared, like, what have I done? Not that I enjoy being a bully, but I just enjoy the the capacity to actually influence what happens to such an extent, like, and to have that trust within us to do what we needed to protect the bank.
Okay, so
We're kind of seen as the internal police.
So again, like you mentioned before with Suits, for example, like you can be very arrogant when you approach clients. You know, you got to do things my way.
Yeah.
Again, you're gonna be playing into those kind of tropes, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. What law didn't actually have compliance made up for?
Nice. So it's been 3 years now since you left university and gone down this route.
Yeah.
So do you have any regrets going down this route, or have you fully enjoyed it going down the compliance route?
I would say I don't have any regrets. I think it was definitely the right choice for me. I think I really do enjoy my role, and like I said, and that's because it's not always the same. You're constantly working on something new or something different, or people are asking you questions about different things all the time. So I'm not siloed into one kind of practice and just building my skills on that. I'm always learning something new, working on something new, and that's something that would not always be the case if I was working in law. And also I have friends who have gone into law, And when I speak to them and I hear about the hours and the work that they're doing, I'm just grateful that I chose this as opposed to taking that corporate law route.
Okay, so going back to when you were a teenager, like 16 or 18, what advice would you give yourself back then? Would you still tell yourself go study law at university, or would you tell yourself something different?
To be honest, I don't really have any regrets about the route that I took. I think law was difficult, but I overcame it. So that's something I'm quite happy about, and I'm quite grateful that I had the opportunity to do it and to come out of it with a good degree and a good employment prospects coming out of it. What I would say to 18-year-old or 16-year-old me, however, is to not worry so much, because the plans that you make, honestly, rarely ever come out exactly that way in reality. Things always change, but you'll always find your route. And I say this to my siblings as well, because I think first child going through it always has a bit more pressure, because your parents are also trying to make sure that you do. I mean, even when I told my parents I didn't want to become a lawyer, that was a huge sticking point. Like, they were like, why though? Because you've worked so hard to get to this position, you've done all these experiences. Why at this point are you pulling out now? And I think that's a difference between generations, because for us, happiness and satisfaction in what you do is also very important, whereas sometimes for the generation above us, that's not as important because they had to provide, and for them just getting food on the table or getting the money that they needed was the priority. I think we have more leisure in what we choose to do, and we have just a bit more flexibility. So for them it was kind of like, oh no, but now what are you going to do? Like, what other option is there if you're not becoming a lawyer? Well, why did you study law then? But now they see that everything's worked out quite well. They're a lot more relaxed, and they agree that it was the right choice to take. So when I speak to my siblings, I say to them, like, well, don't stress that much. Don't put such rigid plans in place that you can't adapt going forward. And if things don't go your way, don't be disheartened, because, I mean, I did apply for law, I think, in my second year, and I wasn't successful at that time. Then you go around and you try again in third year, and it was quite disheartening getting those rejection emails. But whatever you end up in, eventually you'll get what you need, and you'll be happy where you are. It just takes time, and to kind of not lose motivation, because it can be difficult.
You now look back, but now going forwards now, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
See, there's so many different things that I could see myself doing in 5 years' time. I could 100% continue in the role that I'm in and go forward. I could take it. There's a lot of reg tech coming up at the moment, regulatory technology. So like startups doing that kind of thing. That seems quite interesting. It's a bit more of a modern way of working. Investment banking can be seen to be quite archaic sometimes in the way that it operates. Like, for us, working from home wasn't something that we were really allowed to do until the pandemic hit, and then we all had to adapt to it. That will obviously change and things will adjust going forward. But if you look at different industries and how they operate, investment banking still has a lot to catch up on. And sometimes I think that maybe working in a more modern and more, up-to-date environment would be something I could thrive in. So that's something that I consider maybe going into within the next 5 years. And then, I don't know, I think outside of professional life, I would probably like to see myself more involved with more like outreach projects, more charity work, because I think to an extent I'm happy at the moment with where I am with my professional life, but I would like to be more involved in charity projects and more outreach things, because I think I don't know, I feel like you have a duty to kind of help where you can. So that for me is a big focus for myself at the moment, is setting that up for myself, seeing what I actually want to do, where my, I guess, passion lies for outreach. So more than professional, that's my focus for the next 5 years.
Okay. That's very inspiring to hear about.
I was not trying to be cheesy or inspiring. It's truthful.
No, it's noble intentions, if that's what you want to do, go for it, and
yeah,
if your heart's in the right place, absolutely, I encourage you to do so. So pretty much coming to an end now, and so what's there anything that we've talked about for the past half an hour or so would you want the audience to take away from our conversation today?
I would say that don't let the box that you're in or the choices that you've take and restrict you. There's always a way out, or there is always a way to change if you find something that appeals to you more. And to not stress about it that much either. Everybody probably says this, and it's for a reason. We've come out of it, we've made different decisions that can sometimes seem intimidating or seem like you're doing the wrong thing at the time. But you'll reach a point where you look back and you think, well, why was I even stressing about it? Because everything worked out in the end, and it really does.
That's good. So thank you for coming on today, and see you guys in the next one.
All right. Hi guys.
This is Ramadan Radio. Little Dessert Shop continues to expand with stores in Bilston, Wolverhampton and Wednesfield. During Ramadan, we're celebrating our show-stopping dunking box for only £25. Feed the family with this exquisitely presented iftari gift, featuring the best from our menu. Enter Ramadan 25 at the checkout on our incredible new website. Visit littledessertshop.co.uk today, the holy month of gifting. From all at Little Dessert Shop, we'd like to wish you a blessed Ramadan and a huge Eid Mubarak.
Do you have a family member that's passed away and you would like someone to assist you in legal advice? Kenneth Jones Solicitors has been providing legal services for businesses and individuals since 1986. We specialise in probate, Islamic wills and family law. We also offer services in conveyancing, immigration and personal injury. Contact us today on 01902 745 773 or visit us on our website at kenneth-jones.co.uk.
Mubi Bass Electronics, specialist in car audio and home entertainment. Suppliers of leading brands, Samsung, Sony, and Panasonic. We supply and fit all car audio systems, top brands, Kenwood, Bose, and we're an authorized supplier of Vibe product. Visit our store online at mubibass.co.uk and order today for next day delivery. Mubi Bass Electronics are proud sponsors of Wolverhampton Wanderers FC. Call us today for a free quote on 01902 754 546 and quote Ramadan 20 for 10% off. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Mubi Bass Electronics, specialist in car audio and home entertainment.
Is your home protected from the unexpected? It can be with Home Cover Plan, Wolverhampton's fastest growing home emergency cover from as little as $14.50 a month. That's right, for just $14.50 a month, Home Cover Plan will protect your boiler, radiators, electrics, plumbing and any other home emergencies with no catches, no call-out charges and no excess charges plus a boiler service. What's more, for Ramadan 2020, we're offering 15% off our policies with the code Ramadan15. Go to homecoverplan.co.uk now and join the many thousands already enjoying the benefits. Your tyres are essential for safe driving. They're the only link between your vehicle and the road. At Premier Tyres, we proudly stock leading tyre brands such as Goodyear, Michelin, Pirelli and more. We're also your go-to garage for MOTs, servicing, exhausts and all your mechanical needs. With the most affordable prices in town, unmatched quality, knowledgeable and fully qualified mechanics, we will look after your car no matter the make or model. Premier Tyres, Crown Street, WV1 1PX. Call 01902 455 684 or visit premiertyreservices.com.
Are you in receipt of benefits and looking for cavity wall or underfloor insulation? Did you know, with Northern Gas Heating, you could get a free boiler with the insulation measure of your choice? Call 0800 083 1000 or go to northerngasheating.com to see if you're eligible. It's a quick and easy assessment. Northern Gas Heating, celebrating over 20 years in the industry. We're proud to be the UK's local central heating company.
Pack Continental, your local best halal supermarket in Wolverhampton. Established for over 20 years, we pride ourselves on our fresh vegetables and fresh fruit. We have a variety of spices and lentils. We're also an award-winning Halal Butcher of the Year for 2 consecutive years. We supply excellent quality meat and poultry delivered fresh daily to our store. Visit us today at 1-3 Hunter Street, Wolverhampton, WV6 0QZ, or call 01902 717 792. Open 9am till 8pm Monday to Saturday and 10am till 6pm on Sundays. Go to RamadanRadioWolves.com and donate to your local mosque.
Welcome back to Going Beyond Wolverhampton and our episode about law. So before the break we spoke to Rita, who studied law at university but is not actually a lawyer, but now we're going to speak to someone who did the opposite. So with me today is Hanif. He's a trainee solicitor from Cambridge who studied history at LSE before going on to become a solicitor. Hey Hanif, how's it going?
Hi, Akmal. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for coming on to the show today. So the first thing I want to touch upon is that you're from Cambridge, and obviously we all know about the university there. But what is Cambridge actually like to live in as a city?
Yeah, so Cambridge is obviously most well known as being a university city. So during the academic year, there are obviously thousands of students at the University of Cambridge and also Anglia Ruskin University in Cambridge. So yeah, it's filled with university students, but there is also quite a heavy, like there's sort of two sides to Cambridge. So there's also like just the normal, townspeople, and I guess I'd count myself amongst them, having grown up near Cambridge. And I went to secondary school in a sort of town outside of Cambridge, but I did go to sixth form within Cambridge itself. So yeah, Cambridge is normally quite vibrant, especially when all the students are there. It's got a lot of international people visiting. It's got a lot of tourists. But it's not too big. It's definitely nowhere near as big as, say, London or Birmingham. So it's still got quite a peaceful sort of feeling most of the time. So it's not too busy.
So you mentioned you went to school outside of Cambridge and inside Cambridge. What kind of schools did you go to?
So I went to like the local, state secondary school. So yeah, quite a normal school. And then I went to actually quite a good state sixth form, one of the best in the country, for my A levels.
And how did you find the transition between the two different schools?
It was quite big, quite honestly, because quite a big difference between my local secondary school and to the sixth form, because the sixth form had a lot of very high performers there, especially even students moving across from top independent schools in Cambridge. So I had to sort of readjust to this new environment. And then I was very quickly, because sixth form was only for 2 years, so then quickly looking up towards university. And so there was a very quick sort of process of catching up, readjustment of my expectations, and basically just getting into line as far as what the academic requirements were.
What was the biggest adjustment you had to make, you feel, when you moved to this new sixth form?
It was probably just the academic standards. So, in terms of the amount of, so I studied humanities for my A levels. So, English literature, history, and geography. So, humanities subjects, which actually at the level of A levels requires quite a lot of attention to detail and accuracy and, reading, for example. So I think that having to study that at A level at a top sixth form meant that, the standards were quite high. And, for example, submitting essays regularly for English and history was common. And so therefore, that was definitely the biggest readjustment I had to make.
Okay, and so when you were at sixth form, how did you decide on what you were going to study at university?
So I was actually very, very confused for the first, year, my AS year, and I was actually tempted because I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do, but I thought I need to decide a degree that relates to my future career. So I was very tempted to study actually law, but in the end I decided on history, and that was because I didn't know much about law, and it felt like just too much of a jump to go to law having no background in it, whereas history was sort of tried and tested, and I knew I was quite good at it. So I decided on history in the end. But to be honest, there was a bit of even family debate that I had, because my dad preferred me to study law, coming from a sort of background where studying like a more academic or a more career focused subject is normally best. Whereas for me, I'm aware that, you can kind of go into any career after university as long as you enjoy the subject you study at university.
Okay, so the intention had always been that you wanted to become a lawyer in the end, but it's just how you became a lawyer.
Yeah, I guess so, right? So I wasn't really sure at sixth form. It just seemed like being a lawyer was a career track, but it wasn't like my clear intention. I think my intention to become a lawyer was really solidified in my first year of university, when at LSE I met like a lot of very career-minded people, and I started going to like law firm open days. But before then, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. No, and law was not like a definite option.
Okay, so what other options do you reckon you had on the table at the time?
Yeah, so an obvious option was teaching, because history, studying history and then teaching history, it's not like a very far jump to make. And I enjoy like working with younger people. I enjoy giving advice, mentoring people, and helping people to grow. So teaching was one option. Another option was sort of like the civil service. But again, I didn't really know many people in that career path, so it was hard to relate to, a bit like history, a bit like law. But in the end, I went for law.
And so when it came to choosing history at university, then how did you choose a university you want to study history at? Because I imagine different universities have very different curriculums when it comes to history, especially.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So, for example, some universities focus mainly on British or European history, whereas LSE, the London School of Economics, really focuses on international history. So that's the reason I chose LSE, because it's very like a very broad curriculum of study. So at LSE, I studied topics, modules from countries all over the world, African history, Middle Eastern history, Asian history. And also it was mainly the Department of International History at LSE is mainly modern. So I preferred modern history in the last sort of 500 years, as opposed to ancient history, which some other universities specialize in.
Okay, and so what was it like studying history at LSE then? Did it meet your expectations upon what you wanted to study there?
Yeah, it definitely did. It was a really great experience. It was very broad in terms of what, the subjects that I could study, and it was very modern, which was great. I didn't have any surprises as far as what I signed up for. But yeah, also the experts at LSE, the academic experts, they were really, really knowledgeable in their field. So I enjoyed learning from some of the best scholars when it came to Middle Eastern history, for example, or Latin American history, and attending their lectures and classes was really eye-opening for me.
And what would you say was your favorite module at LSE?
Oh, so that would probably be a module called Islamic Empires, 1400 to 1800, because it was basically about these really important empires called the Ottoman Empire, the Safavid Empire, which was in Iran, and the Mughal Empire in India. So we studied these three empires from like different perspectives, how they were run, the culture, the type of Islam that they practiced, and how they developed over the span of about 400 years. So it was really eye-opening, and it's a part of history that we in the UK don't really study at school. Of course, we mainly study European history, so I found it very eye-opening to see how these sort of early modern Islamic empires operated.
Okay, that's quite interesting. And I presume as part of your degree, you did a dissertation as well?
Yeah, I did. I did a dissertation my third year. So I did a dissertation on sort of British foreign policy towards the Arab Middle East in the early 20th century, so just after the First World War. So it was an area that I was already very interested in due to some background research. And so I decided to explore it more. And yeah, it was really, really interesting. I was able to go to the National Archives in West London in Kew and do some archival research. I also went to some libraries in Oxford to get some particular books that were only there. And I did a lot of research. I spoke to people to write my 10,000 word dissertation. It was tough, of course. It was tiring, and it was in the end there was a lot of work towards the deadline, a lot of work that I had to do, but it was a really great experience.
Okay, that's great to hear. And what, apart from your studies at LSE, what else did you get up to in your free time there?
So I was actually really involved in the TEDx LSE Society. So that was basically a society that was focused around hosting an annual TEDx conference at our university. So I was involved throughout my degree. In my first year, I was sort of responsible for sponsorship, and then second year I got more involved in like leading the society to host an annual conference. And I even sort of remained in touch with the society in my final year. And that was a really great way to host an event, to gain the skills and experience of hosting an event, and welcoming in outside speakers, but also socializing with different people, different students from LSE, and yeah, just sort of having something on my CV that would demonstrate that I could be an effective member of a team.
Did you do anything during your time where it helped you towards your ambitions in becoming a lawyer?
Yeah, so like practically, I attended open days. I signed up for, in law, we call it vacation schemes. So they're just basically internships in a law firm. So I did several of those at the end of my second year of uni. And yeah, so that all helps you if you're aspiring to become a solicitor. Doing open days and vacation schemes at law firms helps you on the path to getting a training contract offer, which is what you need to become a qualified lawyer.
When doing your vacation scheme, what do you reckon is key to do in order to obtain your training contract in the end?
That's a good question. I think probably one of the most important things to do is just to appear really enthusiastic and diligent. Like you're always able and willing to perform a task. And even though, for example, me, who hadn't yet studied law, I had to do that after finishing my bachelor's. So I didn't have much legal knowledge, but just being enthusiastic about the task and willing to learn, I think is really key, and it's going to help you get an offer from a law firm.
Okay, and so when it came to choosing what training contract you did in the end, I remember you had several offers. So how did you make your mind up on which law firm to just join in the end?
Yeah, so I had several factors that I had to decide on, like the quality of the training program, the size of the law firm, because obviously like American law firms that are have an office in London are smaller, and so they are not necessarily not as good, but they offer, you're working in smaller teams normally, and there are fewer other trainees like you, so there are benefits and disadvantages to that aspect. But yeah, other things like the culture of the firm, so how friendly it feels, how what the firm's attitude is to things like charity and diversity, are all quite relevant factors to help me make my decision.
Okay, did you feel there were across different law firms, like, is it fairly uniform, the culture, or can it vary quite drastically from law firm to law firm?
So it does vary, definitely. There are different working styles, there are different cultures in different law firms. Obviously there are things that are fairly consistent, and they are ultimately corporate law firms. They serve their clients are large companies and banks and things like that. So there are certain similarities as far as the way they act in a corporate way, but I would say there are quite significant differences between them as far as obviously the kind of work they do, the practice areas, and as I said, the culture of the law firm.
Okay, and so even though you obtained your training contract during your final year at university, you still had several qualifications to do in between, right? So can you just talk us through what you had to do?
Yeah, sure. So I had to do the GDL, that's like stands for the Graduate Diploma in Law, which is like a conversion course to make me equivalent to law graduates. It's like equivalent to a bachelor's law degree. And then I just had to do the LPC, Legal Practitioners course, which all law and non-law students do, which is more of like a practical legal training to get you ready ahead of starting your training contract. However, these legal qualifications are being phased out. So there's a new SQE route that's being introduced for new aspiring lawyers. So that's the new route that aspiring lawyers should look at, the SQE route from now on.
Okay, so SQE, is that just going to replace the LPC entirely?
It is, exactly, yeah. It's going to replace the LPC, and it will be also reforming the sort of traditional training contract, which is what I'm currently doing. So actually you can start, the training contract will be modernized, so you can do it the period of training in different law firms, and you can also do the SQE exams at different points. You don't necessarily have to do it right before your training.
So rather than being signing up to one law firm and being stuck there for an entire time for your training, you can move around at least.
That's it. I mean, the whole point of the SQE is to introduce more flexibility into the qualification process for the legal profession. So that's part of the reason, is because it's quite expensive if you don't have funding from a law firm to become a lawyer. So it's designed to make it more affordable for people. It's designed to encourage diversity and just open up the qualification process a bit more.
But I presume the GDL is going to remain though.
Some form of it will, exactly. It's the new GDL is actually called the PGDL now, just standing for the postgraduate. So it's been a bit updated, but I have some friends doing the PGDL. But yeah, some form of it will remain because it's still needed. But yeah, it won't be technically required, though. Like, we still don't know. Probably most aspiring lawyers will do it if they haven't done an undergrad law degree.
Okay, and what was it like studying the GDL and the LPC, having studied a history degree? Like, do you feel the history degree prepared you quite well to study for these kind of qualifications?
Yeah, so in some ways it definitely did, because being a law student, there's a lot of reading involved. So just being able to read and analyze a lot of material and basically work out what it means, and so not and learning not to read endlessly, and you've always got to read with a very specific purpose in mind. That was quite good preparation, I would say. However, law itself is quite a bit more practical than history, I would say. So especially the GDL, it was focused on problem solving constantly. So in that sense, it was quite different, and that's similar with the LPC, which was quite practical. So, and of course, the content is completely different. So yeah, there were definitely similarities, but overall, it was quite a new experience for me, and I had to learn a lot.
Before you actually began studying, though, you also took a bit of a gap in your studies as well. And so why did you want to take a gap before you began doing your GDL?
Yeah, so I took that year off because I just finished my undergraduate degree and I had my training contract offer, so I could sort of see in the future as to what I would be doing. And when I had the opportunity from my law firm to take this gap, I just thought, why not? I should take it, because I hadn't done much traveling before. I hadn't really left Europe before, so the idea to explore different parts of the world and to just broaden my horizons slightly seemed like a really attractive option. It did take quite a bit of convincing myself that it would be a good idea to take a whole year out, but in the end, yeah, it seemed like I had a good rationale for just taking some time out from a sort of 9 to 5 or longer schedule, and actually just focusing on myself for a while.
Okay, so where did you go during your travels then?
So yeah, I signed up for a government volunteering scheme, actually, which is now unfortunately being phased out, or it's just not running anymore. It's called the International Citizen Service, or ICS, which is, as I say, a government scheme which sends British volunteers to various developing countries, and we basically volunteer in local communities. So I went to Kenya, and to the west part of Kenya, and I was able to volunteer in a sort of NGO dealing with child orphans, and also a local school focused on sort of teaching English and extracurricular activities. So yeah, the experience was really, really eye-opening, and I was there for about 3 months. And then I came back to the UK, and then I went traveling for the best part of 9 months, mainly in Asia. So I was in East Asia, and I was also in Central Asia, and also the Middle East.
What would you say were the highlights from your trips in Asia and Kenya?
So Kenya was, I think the highlight from that volunteering experience was just working in the community and just like daily life of, trying to think of ways of how to make myself useful and, utilize my skills and, just communicate, outreach with people, because everyone's just doing their daily life, and I'm there as a volunteer to try to make an impact in whatever way I can. So it was just daily life and just the little, things that I noticed on a daily basis, as far as routine and, how actually, like, even though I'm in a completely different country, actually we're quite similar. And even I noticed, I really enjoyed my time in Kenya, and that I could have stayed there for much, much longer. So that was probably, my experience in Kenya. As far as when I went traveling, I think what I particularly enjoyed when I was in a tiny, well, not exactly tiny, but it's a pretty small country in Central Asia called Kyrgyzstan, and I was there for about a month, and that was really, really great for me because it's got really nice hiking routes in the mountains, and the people are very, very friendly. So, for example, like I went hiking down a large valley, and then I was getting pretty tired, and there was like no shops for like miles and miles. There was just nothing, just walking through villages. And then a guy saw me, just a local man, and he like brought me into his house and fed me. And I was like, I just fell asleep on his floor for like a couple of hours whilst he's just like watching over me, and I'm getting back to health because I was pretty knackered. And then he like put me on my way again. So that was quite an interesting experience.
Okay, random acts of kindness is always a good thing to see. Okay, Hanif, so we're coming to a close of our interview. So there are two things I wanted to ask that I've asked everyone so far on the show. So if you can go back in time and speak to 18-year-old Hanif, what advice would you give him?
Firstly, it's just to be more confident and to be more self-assured as to who I am, and well, who I was, and what I stand for, because I think having principles and having confidence as to who you are, even at a younger age, being 18 years old, of course you don't necessarily know everything, but just at least having the confidence to be able to articulate your views and to be able to be confident when interacting with people, I think is something that I had to learn at university. And if I could have had that gem of advice when I was 18, that would have really helped me.
Okay, and then looking forward, then, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time, Hanif?
Oh, well, that 5 years time, that's sort of that's a while away, I hope. But I hope to obviously have qualified as a lawyer, as a solicitor, because that's sort of in my sights now. So yeah, qualification, that would be a career goal. And yeah, hopefully doing meaningful work, something that I enjoy, but also enjoying life and finding the time to focus on myself, on what I want from life, and also helping other people. I'd be at a stage where I'm definitely helping other people on a regular basis, and also not forgetting to enjoy myself and to see the world and different cultures, and to ultimately travel.
Oh, that's a beautiful answer, Hanif. Thank you very much. So thank you for coming on, Hanif.
Thanks, Akmal.
So that brings us to the end of today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it and managed to gain some good insight from it. This is our last episode during Ramadan, but don't worry, the show shall be continuing even after Ramadan. So for those of you celebrating Eid this week, Eid Mubarak, and we hope you have a good day.